On this episode of Sauce and Hench, we discuss, is Steph really overrated? Three surprising players in the NBA so far, and the first ever Sauce's hotness scale. Sauce and Hench is coming up. And welcome everybody to another episode of Sauce and Hench, but no Hench. Hench is still down in Florida. Went to the new Galaxy's Edge today, so I'm hoping he's having fun and hope to have him back soon. But today the topic is really the NBA, if as you found out from the first intro. So the question was, heading into the year, is Steph overrated? Well, the Golden State Warriors did not open up extremely hot as we're used to. As you know, they went to 5 straight NBA Finals, won 3 of them, 4 of them against LeBron James, and the Warriors are sitting at 4-3, which isn't too bad. But the question really was, is Steph overrated? And this is a guy that's won 2 MVPs. He's 3-time NBA champion. One of them MVPs actually was unanimous. The first person to ever do that. So how is it even fair to say he's overrated and he can't carry a team? Well, the fact is that the Warriors outside of Draymond and Steph don't have a facilitator. Steph had to be the point guard, and he moves like a shooting guard, like he moves well off the ball, but he had to have the ball because there's no one else that you could really trust with it. Who are you going to trust with the ball? Andrew Wiggins, Kelly Oubre? It doesn't really make sense for that. And, you know, he's missing Clay again, as Clay went down for his second straight season after he tore his Achilles after coming off his ACL injury that he suffered in the NBA Finals. That's 21.5 points that he's missing coming off the books, really, because of him tearing his Achilles in a workout before the season could start. And then Draymond's been in and out of the lineup, and that's a guy that averages around 6 to 7 assists a season. Highest ever was 7.4 in the 15-16 season. So how is it fair to say that Steph can't carry a team when the best players are out? And you had Kelly Oubre, who, missed 19 straight threes. It was something very bad. He could not make a three. Right now, he's shooting a 167 and a 6 for 36. You can't even really trust Andrew Wiggins from behind the arc either. And James Wiseman can shoot threes, but you really don't want him to when he's 7 foot. Probably he's up there for Rookie of the Year right now, but again, it's early in the year. No one's even played 10 games yet. I think the highest is 8 by the Celtics. This Warriors team is also in the bit of a learning curve. When I say learning curve, I mean that their team chemistry isn't fantastic right now, considering that they had to add more players, and the guys that do have chemistry are injured. Again, Clay and then Draymond come in and out of the lineup. And let's be fair to Steph. The Warriors didn't make the playoffs, so there was a 9-month layoff. And then he only played in 5 games last year after he broke his hand. So, of course, he's going to be rusty coming into the year. So when he started off slow, everyone started to throw a panic. And the same people, I think, that point a finger at Steph and say that he's overrated are LeBron James fans. They're so bitter about Steph and those stacked, loaded, whatever word you want to say for those Warriors teams, took away 3 NBA championships. And in all fairness, in that one where the Cavs came back 3-1, if Draymond ever gets suspended during Game 4, I think that the Warriors win the series in maybe 5-6 games, because after that Game 5 victory, the Cavs just got red hot and just took over the finals. You know, and Steph finally proved to those critics that he put a team on his back. It's just easier when you can feel more comfortable and you get those corner threes. Kind of like with Kobe White with the Bulls. If you've listened to a previous podcast with me and Joe, we discussed that Kobe was more of a shooting guard in his days in North Carolina, but now that Billy Donovan is with the Bulls as the head coach, he's more of a point guard. So he's still learning how to be a point guard while he still has shooting guard mentalities. And I think that's what's happening with Steph. But, you know, he went out and scored 62 points against the Portland Trail Blazers. And then last night against Sacramento, he went out and scored another 30 in just 30 minutes because the Warriors beat the Kings by 31 points. And he also had 9 rebounds and 8 assists. So it would have been an easy triple-double for Steph if he would have been able to finish the game. But again, why risk injury for Steph Curry when their team's up 31 points against the Kings? I'm not saying that the Warriors are going to go out and win a championship on the back of Steph Curry. They're in the Western Conference, and it's still very tough. And you also have to remember you still have teams like the Lakers, the Clippers, the Suns are coming around. And then you get also a lot of really tough teams. Like Portland's tough still. Dallas is off to a slow start, but I look for them to kick it back up when if Kristaps ever comes back this year. Steph is the real deal, and I think people need to accept that. Steph is the best shooter in NBA history. When he's done, he's going to beat the all-time three-point record, which is held by Ray Allen and then some. Steph also changed the game. No one really thought about shooting the three ball until Steph started burying them, and Klay Thompson, his splash brother, was burying them, and just opens up the floor and allows for opportunities for their team and forces double teams out in the perimeter, and they get down low and get buckets from down there. The Warriors are going to be carried by Steph, and if Draymond can stay in, I think they can make the playoffs as a mid to low seed, but I'm not seeing NBA Finals in their future. But I do expect Steph to end up in the top 5 for MVP voting. Next thing, Tom Thibodeau, former coach of the Chicago Bulls, this is his first year as the new coach of the New York Knicks. Well, if you're a Bulls fan, you know that he was the coach when Derrick Rose tore his ACL, and that's one of the top 3 biggest what-ifs in Chicago Bulls history. The other one's connected to Derrick Rose and his injury is if Kobe would have came to the Bulls, which he was intending on going to until Shaq asked for a trade, and then LeBron, if he would have signed with Chicago and they've gotten D Wade. But Thibodeau is the one we point at when we say we never won a championship with those Bulls teams with Derrick Rose, Joakim Noah, and Carlos Boozer. And here's why. When Thibodeau took over the Bulls for the 2010-2011 year, Derrick Rose averaged 37.4 minutes. That's the year he won MVP. And the next year, he averaged 35.3 minutes. Well, we head into the playoffs that in the 2011-2012 season, and the Bulls got the first seed for the second year in a row, and they play the Philadelphia 76ers, which should have been an easy win for the Bulls, but it became more difficult when Derrick Rose was still in the game, Bulls up 12, with a minute 22 left in the first game of the series, and he's still playing, goes up and tore his ACL, and he was never the same again. And we all know that was a downward spiral there for Derrick Rose for a minute. Ended up getting traded to the Knicks, and it was just awful. And Tom Thibodeau was here's why he was to blame. Not only was Derrick Rose averaging more than 36 minutes per game, they also had high intensity practices even on their off days. So how do you expect someone like Derrick Rose, who was known for his sleeping ability, to stay healthy? And, you always – in Thibodeau, it's not only the Bulls he did this with. He did it in Minnesota, and now he's doing it in New York. And the topic I wanted to bring up and bring to attention to Knicks fans and other NBA fans is that the Knicks may be 4-3 right now, and they beat the Bucks by 20 this year. Julius Randle having a great year, and so has R.J. Barrett, their young star, who they drafted with a 3rd overall pick just last year, who was a first pick for a while there until Zion Williamson went to the same university as R.J. at Duke and tore it up. And then John Morant at Murray State was also tearing it up. And the Pelicans, and I would say the top 3 picks that year were on the money. The Pelicans got Zion, the Grizzlies got Ja, and the Knicks got RJ. Well, here's the issue. This is why we're going to bring to the attention, is that RJ Barrett is leading the NBA in minutes per game with 38.7 minutes. That's first. Last year, he only averaged 30.4 minutes. And you also have to remember that this isn't a typical NBA season. There was a 9-month layoff for teams that weren't invited to the bubble. Their last game was March 11th in what would be Vince Carter's last game, an overtime win over the Hawks. And here, I'll give you this. Here are the last 5 games for RJ Barrett. 38 minutes and 15 seconds against Milwaukee, 38-45 against Cleveland, 36-56 against Toronto, which ended up being a 17-point win, 42 minutes and 16 seconds against Indiana, and 43 minutes and 45 seconds against Atlanta. In that last game, he only missed 4 minutes and 15 seconds. That's insane. That's ridiculous. And to give you an idea how bad that is, not only is RJ first, but Julius Randle is second in minutes. He's averaging 38.4 minutes. So just a 3-second difference between the two. If you're the Knicks, this is kind of alarming because you've seen what happened to Derrick Rose. And if you want to get a good team together, you always have to find that young star you can build around. The Bulls was Zach LaVine. For Golden State, it was Steph Curry. For the Cavs, there was LeBron until he left for Miami. And for the Knicks, it had to be RJ Barrett. But if RJ gets wear and tear at such a young age, what is there to say that he won't also get hurt if he keeps playing these type of minutes? There's 72 games. And if the Knicks can make the playoffs, it's only going to get worse from here. He's only 20 years old. And he's leading the NBA in minutes. That's not good on your knees. And if Thibodeau is still doing these high-intensity practices, which I'm not sure if he is or not because I'm not in the Knicks training facility, RJ Barrett could be facing injuries down the line in maybe 5-6 years if Thibs remains the coach and the Knicks keep winning. 4-3 is pretty good for a team that just known for their lackluster seasons and just falling short. They haven't made NBA Finals since 95, I believe, and they lost to the Houston Rockets when MJ was gone. So they probably wouldn't even made it if MJ was still playing basketball instead of playing AA baseball for the Chicago White Sox. If you're the NBA front office, or not the NBA front office, the New York Knicks front office, you need to sit Thibs down and say, hey, I understand that we're winning, but I don't think this team can win a championship. So there's no need to play RJ and Julius Randle these type of minutes. Of course, yeah, it feels good to win a couple of games, especially when you've been trying to tank for so long and try to get that next pick. And, they traded their best player, Kristaps Porzingis, to Dallas just a couple of years ago. He got a big extension down there for the Mavs. This team can't win the NBA championship. Everyone knows it. The Eastern Conference is just loaded with teams this year. The Bucks looking good. The 76ers are good. The Celtics. And then the Hawks are coming to turn around. And don't forget that Miami and Brooklyn. Some pretty good teams that I don't think that New York can beat. Yeah, they beat the Bucks, but the Bucks are finally turning it around. They're hitting threes. 29 threes in one game against Miami. Score 140-something points. I just don't see the cost in hurting RJ Barrett's career for a season that probably won't end up in a championship. Maybe a first-round exit if they were to make it as a low seed somewhere, maybe between 6 and 8. Yeah, if you sit around 500, but you don't actually have to be 500, you can make the playoffs as playoffs with the Eastern Conference, considering that it's so top-heavy. Again, if RJ goes down, then what do the Knicks really have? Not much. RJ is supposed to be their future. He's supposed to be their star player. He's averaging 18.3 points, which is a 4-point improvement from last year. He's getting more rebounds and he's getting more assists, but he's also getting 8.3 more minutes. That's going to be a lot going down the stretch. So just keep an eye out for the New York Knicks and how Tom Thibodeau handles minutes, because he's just known for relying on his stars, and eventually they go down, and then he doesn't know why. 3 surprising players. I think I went this way because we get so caught up in talking about the MVP, and it's usually just the same guys recycled every year. Giannis, LeBron, James Harden, Luka is going to be on there, and then maybe one more guy they sneak on in there. But I want to talk about 3 surprising players that just came out of the woodwork and no one's really talking about. First up, from the Indiana Pacers, Domantas Sabonis, who's been known for being the triple-double threat. He's averaging 20.6 points, career high, 11.3 total rebounds, also career high, and 6.7 assists. He's also averaging 0.9 steals, and 0.6 blocks. And the Pacers are 5-2, and they're sitting in tied for second in the Eastern Conference with the Orlando Magic. And the Pacers were kind of in a weird spot heading into the offseason because there's rumors that Victor Oladipo didn't want to be in Indiana anymore, that there is a story that came out during the offseason that he was talking to players and saying to the other team in front of his teammates' faces, come get me, come acquire me from Indiana. And this is the guy that went to IU, and he's beloved by every Pacer fan I've met. My good friend, Pat Masters, loves Vic because not only is he a Pacer and he was their best player there for a bit, but he was also an Indiana Hoosier there. And then he went second overall in the draft to Orlando. So people were thinking that he was going to get traded and then Miles Turner was going to follow in the footsteps. Well, none of that happened. The team looked exactly the same as last year. Same starting lineup and everything. Malcolm Brogdon, Vic, TJ Warren, who went out with an injury, and then Domantas Sabonis and Miles Turner. Well, the fact that Sabonis is putting the team on his back shows me that he's a very good player. He was the guy that got traded from Oklahoma City to Indiana in the Paul George trade. Well, if Sabonis keeps putting up these numbers, for Pacer fans, it's going to be known as the Sabonis trade. He's a phenomenal player. He's a great leader. If it wasn't for him, the Pacers wouldn't be where they're at. I mean, 5-2 is a great record. The one loss was to the Knicks, which was only 4 points. They beat Boston in a thriller of a game. Yeah, they've also beaten the Knicks by 14 points in the first game of the year and then beat the Cavs by 20 points. And they won a thriller yesterday in overtime against the Pelicans with Victor Oladipo scoring 6 points underneath 1 minute and tying the game up, saying overtime, and then Brogdon hit the game winner. I didn't know what to think of the Pacers heading into the year. I thought for sure you could just write off the Pacers if they were going to trade everyone off heading into that offseason. But none of that happened, and they're looking like a playoff team again. They've been consistently in the playoffs. If Sabonis can keep putting up these numbers and getting his teammates set up for scoring, who's to say that the Pacers could maybe win a series, get to the second round? I think they could put up a good fight. They're a scrappy team. They represent Indiana very well. Keep an eye out for Sabonis and the Pacers for the rest of the year. Second player I want to talk about, the rookie James Wiseman, 11.4 points, 6.1 total rebounds, and 1.7 blocks. And this is another guy that everyone was keeping a close eye on because he went to University of Memphis, not to be confused with the Grizzlies, played a couple of games, and then got in trouble with the NCAA and was not allowed to play for the rest of the year. So a lot of scouts were sitting there thinking, well, he looks like the first overall pick, but we haven't really got to see him play. So who's to say he hasn't regressed or gotten worse? Maybe he was being lazy about it. He wasn't training at all. Well, this is a guy that played under Penny Hardaway, not only in college but in high school. And Penny Hardaway had nothing but great things to say about James Wiseman, and he's proven it. James Wiseman's looked like a future star in this league, especially what kind of situation he came in. He's coming into Golden State, who didn't have a center, and he's running with it. He's just dominating the paint. He's scoring, and I think he'll be up there for Rookie of the Year. Him and Anthony Edwards are battling it out. I would say right now it's Anthony Edwards averaging 15 points. He was the first overall pick out of Georgia to Minnesota. James Wiseman looking like the real deal. He's dominating the paint. He's scoring buckets. He's not that bad of a three-point shooter. He's shooting 41.7% from behind the arc, which he only attempts about 1 or 2 a game. But it's still, you have to respect it. And you can probably spread out the floor then for Steph and when Clay comes back, which he's going to be out for the rest of the year. So we'll have to wait for the 2021-2022 season for the three-headed monster really to come together. We're actually 4, considering Draymond also. He'll still be there. And the third and final player, Mikal Bridges. And now this is the guy that I felt bad for on his draft night. He's a third-year player. Was drafted by the Philadelphia 76ers. And his mom actually had worked in the PR department for the 76ers. So when he got drafted, everyone was excited. His mom was excited. Like, he was so happy to be able to work on the same team with his mom, a team that he grew up watching, getting to be a 76er. And, if you're from Philadelphia, being the 76ers is a huge deal, kind of like with the Eagles and the Phillies. And then maybe 15, 20 minutes later, Michael gets traded to the Phoenix Suns. Could you believe that? You see this kid get from ecstatic, and then they send down that hall off the stage, and they ask him questions about how it feels to be drafted and how he's excited to be in Philadelphia. But then they told him that he got traded, and you could see his heart broken. So with his mom. So, but now he's doing pretty good in Phoenix. Phoenix was a team that had a lot of hype around it because they went 8-0 in the bubble, which was shocking. Their coach won coach of the bubble. They had those different awards. And then they acquired Chris Paul from Oklahoma City. Now, Michael is averaging 14.1 points, 5.6 total rebounds, 0.9 assists, 0.7 steals, and 1.4 blocks. And the Suns are 5-2, tied for first in the Western Conference. And I had to say, I watched a game for the Suns. It was against the Pelicans on TNT. It was an absolute blowout of a win for the Pelicans. The Suns. And Bridges kind of reminds me of a very young Kevin Durant. He's lengthy. He can shoot the ball pretty well. And with 1.4 blocks tells me he can also play defense very well. Mikal Bridges is the surprising player rising out of Phoenix. Chris Paul, obviously the new player. Devin Booker, been the star of that team forever. Former first overall pick DeAndre Ayton. And then, Michael being a nice role player. He stands in the corner on the wing, and he hits those three-pointers, and he can attack the lane and shoot over defenders considering what his wingspan is. So those are my three surprising players this season. And, if they keep doing what they're doing, maybe one of these guys, I can see James Wiseman winning Rookie of the Year. Maybe Sabonis could be up for Most Improved, or maybe even Mikal Bridges if he continues to produce. All right, so we're going to give this a shot. The first ever Sauce's Hotness Scale. Obviously, you know that with sauces, you have your hotness scale. You have your blazing, and then you have your mild, which is it's good, but it's not too hot. If you're anything like me, you can't stand anything that's too hot. I can't do it. Last name's mild. It proves off in my taste of food. So this is how it's going to work. There's only 4, which is blazing. Then you got hot, medium, and mild. Those are your 4. And different teams can fit in these categories. And I wanted to highlight certain teams at this point. So we're going to start with the blazing team. Let's start off with a good note. Some positives for your fans out there. We mentioned earlier about the 76ers. They're looking pretty good. They're 6-1, best record in the NBA. And the one loss came without Joel Embiid. So Joel Embiid in the lineup is 6-0 for the 76ers. And they're right now riding a 4-game winning streak. And I'm going to give you how good they are in these last 4 games. 24-point win against Orlando, who's coming into that game undefeated. It was over by halftime. I didn't even bother turning it on. It was on NBA TV that night. 15 against Charlotte, and then 17 against Charlotte. Not too bad when you're blowing out teams by more than 15 points. And the star, as I mentioned, Joel Embiid. He's averaging 23.2 points, 12.3 total rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal, and 1.7 blocks. And then right behind him, Ben Simmons, 13.3 points, 9.9 rebounds, and 7 assists. Ben Simmons doing Ben Simmons things. Doesn't really need to shoot a 3-ball when you're putting up those numbers. And then Tobias Harris. This is the guy that gave an extension, not this offseason, but the last offseason. And it's paying off this year. He just came off a week where he won Eastern Conference Player of the Week. So let me show you how good Harris played last week. Averaged 23.3 points, 9.7 rebounds, 2 blocks, 2 steals. He went 9 from 16 from behind the arc, 56.3%. And then 28 for 49 from the field, 57.1%. I would say that's pretty good and well-deserving of Eastern Conference Player of the Week. And then the 76ers went out and got Danny Green he was actually on Oklahoma City there for maybe like 2 or 3 days after he'd been traded there in the Dennis Schroeder deal, which sent Dennis Schroeder to the Lakers. The problem with the 76ers is that their shooting wasn't really great. They didn't really have a three-point threat. It was supposed to be Tobias Harris, but he didn't have his best year last year. And you go out and get Danny Green, he's still a good shooter. And, now he had to go into the offseason and reevaluate his shot. And he's doing pretty good for him. When you have Ben Simmons driving the lane, and then you have the threats of Tobias Harris and Danny Green on the wings, it's going to be tough for these teams to collapse down and try and stop them. And Ben Simmons is going to make that pass every time if they're open. And they have Joel Embiid down low, and now they have to respect the three-point shot. And if you put Joel Embiid on an island down in the post with just one more defender, good luck. Unless that defender is maybe Rudy Gobert. I don't see anyone else that can really stop Joel Embiid. Maybe Anthony Davis. Other than that, Joel Embiid is an absolute monster in the paint. The 76ers are benefiting from the Danny Green gamble. 76ers look like a team that can make a run in the East. They had a disappointing end to last year when Ben Simmons got hurt and they got eliminated in the playoffs. And the 76ers are trying to make a comeback. They have Doc Rivers as their head coach. I'd say that the 76ers right now look like the Eastern Conference favorites. 6-1's pretty good, considering that the one loss was without Joel Embiid and had to start Dwight Howard. Good depth for the 76ers. Great starting lineup. They're figuring themselves out, and they're putting less pressure on Ben Simmons to need to shoot the three ball. If you get Ben Simmons driving the lane against a point guard, that's also just a big old good luck, and he's gonna benefit every time. The 76ers are gonna benefit every time. Just reminder that a lot of teams can fit in these categories. It's just I'm not going to go through all 30 teams. I'm just going to put 4 teams down and highlight one for each category. So for hot, we put the Boston Celtics. This is a team that's lacking Kemba Walker. He's out for some time. But their rookie, the 26th pick out of Oregon, Peyton Pritchard, benefiting from Kemba Walker's injury, averaging 8.6 points, 3.1 assists, 1.4 steals, and shooting 42% from behind the arc. You need that when you're missing your point guard. Being able to have him and Jeff Teague both are stepping up when they need it. But not only are those two stepping up, but also Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, which they're out of this world considering these two. This is the duo that no one's really talking about. You have Jaylen Brown, which I know he's been doing really good because he's on my fantasy team, really benefiting from getting him. 26.9 points, 4.6 rebounds, 3.1 assists, and 1.6 steals. And then his counterpart, Jason Tatum, 26.3 points, 7.6 total rebounds, 4 assists, 1 steal, and 1 block. Celtics kind of came off to a rocky start on Christmas Day. They got absolutely shellacked by Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets. Final score of that game was 123-95. And then they lost another game to Indiana. But then they picked up another win against Indiana, beat Memphis, lost to Detroit, and they've won their last 2 games. A 2-point win over Detroit, and then a 12-point win over Toronto. They have a game tomorrow against the Miami Heat at 6:30. Boston Celtics, this is what they did when Kyrie got hurt, is Jason Tatum stepped up. So did Terry Rozier, who's been on a tear with Charlotte. I should put him in my surprising players. I totally forgot about Terry Rozier. If you have time listening to this podcast, go look at Terry Rozier's numbers. Phenomenal. I'm leading the NBA in scoring the last time I checked. Celtics looking like a good team. This is a team that made the Eastern Conference Finals and lost to Miami in 7 games, I believe. If Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum can keep producing these numbers, even when Kemba comes back, they could also be another favorite to win the East. They could battle with Philadelphia, and when Brooklyn finally comes in the swing of things, because now they're missing Kevin Durant, and now they're relying on Kyrie. I'd say that between Miami, Brooklyn, Philadelphia, and Boston, Philly's the best team, but Boston's a close second. Or don't forget about Milwaukee. That's right, Milwaukee. 4-3 is not doing them any justice. The Boston Celtics are a team that are trying to get to those NBA Finals. They haven't made an NBA Finals since they lost to Kobe in the 2010 Finals. And this is a franchise that is from Boston, obviously, and Boston's known for being title town. The Patriots won 6 Super Bowls with Tom Brady. The Bruins won a Stanley Cup, and the Boston Red Sox have won 3 World Series championships since the turn of the 4 World Series championships since the turn of the century. And they've won 1 to kind of get left out. And this is a team that is now tied for most NBA championships. And, but 11 of those championships came from Bill Russell's Celtics when there was only a handful of teams. There wasn't really much competition back then. Really had Wilt Chamberlain and Jerry West. That was really all outside of Boston. So when they won 11 championships, it was like 8 in a row. It was ridiculous. Those old Celtics teams were amazing. But other than that, outside of Larry Bird in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, Celtics really weren't there. It wasn't until they had to get KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and then they had gotten this point guard from Kansas named Rajon Rondo. Oh, actually, Kentucky, Rajon Rondo. Maybe the Boston Celtics can make the finals, and maybe they can make a run at getting back the most NBA championships in a franchise history. You don't ever want to lose that spot, considering that it's your bitter rival, the Los Angeles Lakers, now tied with you, thanks to LeBron and that loaded Lakers squad from last year. For medium, we put the New Orleans Pelicans because they're 4-3, and their longest win streak this year is 2. It's been win-loss, and then that's really what it's been. Just they win a game, then they lose a game. It's been a trade-off for every game for the Pelicans. But I will say that Zion has looked pretty good, and so has Brandon Ingram. And Brandon Ingram, he was billed as the next Kevin Durant coming out of Duke, and he's been looking pretty good after getting out of Los Angeles in the Anthony Davis trade, averaging 25 points, 6.4 rebounds, 5.7 assists, 0.7 steals, and 0.9 blocks. Pretty good for a guy that's considered to be the next Kevin Durant. And then, obviously, Zion. Everyone, when you think of the Pelicans, they have to think of Zion now. Averaging 20.3 points, 8.4 total rebounds, 1.1 assists, 1.3 steals, and 0.6 blocks. He's getting his rebounds and he's getting his buckets. But what is the problem in New Orleans? Why aren't they winning games? Well, the fact that they can't shoot the 3 ball. They are 26th in the league in 3-point percentage with a abysmal 32.3% from behind the arc. And when you have players like Zion and Steven Adams, you need to spread out the floor and get them in the post. Not too many centers can match up with Zion considering his speed. Zion's first step is just wicked, and no one really can keep up with it. And, you get Steven Adams. He does good in the post. He's not too bad. He's not much of a scorer. He's more of a hard-nosed, old-fashioned type of center. He's just going to get his rebounds. That's what he's getting paid for, and to play good defense. But the guy that they rely on to shoot the 3 ball, J.J. Redick, they got him 2 years ago, and this is his second year with New Orleans. He's just not cutting it. He's shooting 24.3%, which is a career low. And this is a guy that's historically good 3-point shooter. He's known for his swingman days in Orlando and then his Lob City days. When you have Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan slamming alley-oops from Chris Paul, people start collapsing down low. Then you get J.J. Redick getting open threes, and he was cashing them. He's a guy that shoots around 40%. And now he's only shooting 24.3%. It's just not cutting it for the Pelicans. They want to win games. Stan Van Gundy's first-year head coach for the Pelicans. He coached in the NBA long before that. just they have to start making their threes and spreading out the floor. That's really what it comes down to. With the NBA the way it is, you have to start matching three-pointers with other teams, especially when you have to play teams like the Warriors and the Trailblazers. I mean, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum might be the most dangerous backcourt in the NBA with the three ball. Damian Lillard can pull it from midcourt and drain it like it's no issue for him. You got to start making the three ball. Simple as that. And if they want to win, start making the three ball. And if JJ Redick's still not doing good, then it's time to cut ties and you have to go trade for another three-point shooter. When that time comes around, the trade deadline, you got to get three-point shooting. If you want to make a run in the playoffs, you got to get Zion open looks down low. You shouldn't have Zion shooting from behind the arc. It's simple as that. Zion's not a three-point shooter. He's not really much of a free throw shooter either. But if you get Zion down low, one-on-one, I'd say to any center that the good luck because Zion's going to he's going to use his body against you. The guy's, 280? He's just going to hurt you. You're going to just not want to even guard him anymore after he keeps running into you. It's just going to keep hurting. It's some number I think SportsCenter gave out when Zion was at Duke that if he ran full speed at you and hit you, it was like getting hit by a semi-truck or something like that. This same amount of force. So, yeah, no, I don't want to be put one-on-one with Zion. I'd rather get a double team down there, clog up the lane, pass it out, and let them shoot threes. This is what the Heat did against Giannis in the Bucks, and it worked, and that's how they made the NBA Finals. And for mild, I had to put them, the Toronto Raptors. This is a team that lost their three-star players in 2 years. They went out and trade DeMar DeRozan for Kawhi Leonard. Actually, that would be 4 players then. Trade DeMar DeRozan to San Antonio to get Kawhi Leonard. They went on a great run, won the NBA championship, which they probably shouldn't have won if it wasn't for Clay and Kevin Durant both going down. Probably was going to be Golden State's 3rd straight championship. Their 4th in 5 years. But other than that, props to Toronto. They do have an NBA championship. Kawhi leaves for the Clippers. Goes back home to Los Angeles. Then Serge Ibaka follows Kawhi the next year and heads to Los Angeles and plays for the Clippers. And then their center that they acquired in that championship run from Memphis, and they had to trade Valanciunas to Memphis, Marc Gasol, he went also to Los Angeles except for the purple and gold, following his brother's footsteps, Pal, who also played for the Lakers. This team's just not cutting it. They're 1-5. They're on a 3-game losing streak. Actually, they lost their first 3 games, beat New York, and then they lost their last 2 games with a 12-point loss yesterday to Boston. And I don't want to point fingers because obviously this team might be going into rebuild mode if they can't win, if they can't make the playoffs in the Eastern Conference. Pascal Siakam is a guy that they're paying $130 million over the next 4 years. Well, let's look at Pascal Siakam's numbers. 17.6 points, 7.4 total rebounds, 3.6 assists, and he's shooting 30% from behind the arc, has a plus-minus of negative 12.4, and shooting 40.7% from the field. This is a guy that's 6'9", 230 pounds, and it's just lengthy. And he won Most Improved Player after they won the championship. Why is Pascal Siakam shooting threes? It's simple. This guy should not be shooting threes for how big he is. They should be attacking the lane like LeBron would do. Just attack the lane and force him to foul. Give it to the free throw line. And once you get your stroke back, then you can maybe start trying to shoot threes again when you feel more comfortable out there. He's not comfortable out there. I watched their game the other day against New Orleans, and the broadcasters just said that he's shooting way too many threes and he's not attacking the lane and getting the free throws. And that's clear. But even Pascal Siakam last year didn't look like the same Pascal Siakam after Kawhi left. In that playoff series against the Boston Celtics that totally eliminated Toronto in 7 games, Siakam averaged 14.9 points, 7.4 rebounds, 3.3 assists, and 1.1 steals, while he shot 38.2% from the field. But here's the ugly one. This is where my eyes start to go when I talk about Pascal Siakam and his struggles. He shot a 12.5% from behind the arc against Boston as a 4 for 32 from behind the arc. 4 for 32. So what you're telling me is that he has to take 8 3-pointers before one goes in. If Pascal Siakam even just did half of what he was doing in that regular season, Toronto Raptors beat Boston, go to the Eastern Conference Finals, and they battled with Miami. Instead, they got sent home, lost Serge Ibaka and Marc Gasol, but they did get back Fred VanVleet, which for the contract he got, he's doing pretty good. 21.8 points, 5.5 total rebounds, 5.5 assists, and shooting 39% from three, that's what he's known for. That's what Fred VanVleet does. He shoots the three ball. That's what got him to the NBA out of Wichita State. But what is the cause of the Raptors? It's not just Pascal Siakam. I don't want anyone to think that it's Pascal Siakam. Yeah, he should be doing a lot better for the money he's getting. He should be averaging over 20 points a game. That's 17.6. It's their defense. Just everything's just not going well for the Toronto Raptors. Right now, they're 26th in scoring, 23rd in rebounding, 18th in assists, and 13th in opponents scoring against, which 13th isn't bad considering there's 30 teams in the NBA. But they're not getting any rebounds. I have to say that every good team can rebound effectively. You're not giving these teams second chances. They're going down, shooting one, you're getting the rebound, and you're going back down the floor. And you got to get rebounds for yourself. You control the glass, you control the tempo of the game, and that's how you win basketball games. It's simple as that. But when you lose Marc Gasol and Serge Ibaka, it's your rebounding is going to take a hit, and it has. Just to give you an idea on how much the Raptors have regressed since the loss of those two guys, here's their last year numbers. They were 13th in scoring. Again, they got 26th last year. 11th in rebounding, 23rd this year. 11th in assists, 18th last year. 18th this year. And they were first in points allowed. So it's kind of taken a hit. Their 13th isn't bad, but when you were first, yeah, it kind of stings a little bit when these teams are scoring on you and you just can't get it to stop. And their record just shows it. The Toronto Raptors just don't look the same. And I don't blame Nick Nurse. Nick Nurse is a great coach. He won Coach of the Year last year for a reason, because the Raptors lose their star player and they still were very competitive. I think they finished around third. I think they were third coming into the playoffs that year. But now they're in 14th. And the only difference between them and this 15th team in the Eastern Conference is one loss, which is the Detroit Pistons, which the Pistons are rebuilding. The Raptors are 2 years removed from their first championship. If I'm Nick Nurse, you really got to sit down and talk to Pascal Siakam and say, hey, you got to stop shooting the three ball. Simple as that. You got to stop shooting the three ball. We got to get you attacking the lane again. You got to start setting some screens for him. You got to give him some open looks from mid-range. Get him at the free throw line and let him work out his stroke. Obviously, his jump shot's not there anymore. And also giving you an idea on how bad their rebounding is. Their leading rebounder is Pascal Siakam, which I said is 7.4 rebounds. 7.4 is not too great. So other than that, we're early in the NBA year, so the Raptors have plenty of time to turn it around. I'm not saying that these are my picks for who I think is going to go to the NBA Finals, because as we've seen last year with the Miami Heat, if you get hot at the right time, you could be in the NBA Finals. Same thing that happened for the Toronto Raptors team 2 years ago. Got hot at the right time. Thanks to Kawhi Leonard hitting probably the biggest shot in I won't say it's the biggest shot in NBA history, but I'd put it in the top 10 when he sank the shot against Philadelphia in Game 7 and sent the 76ers home. And unfortunately, Joel Embiid crying in the tunnel after the loss, which after a heartbreaker like that, I'd probably do the same. So that does it for Sauce's hotness scale. I do want to discuss the Chicago Bulls as we did in the last podcast. They played Portland tonight. So my prediction for that game, it's going to be a high-scoring affair. Portland's known for their offense, but their defense isn't great. They lost Hassan Whiteside, the NBA blocks leader, to Sacramento. So I'm expecting a high-scoring affair between the Bulls and the Trail Blazers. Hopefully the Bulls can pull one off. Maybe if Zach LaVine can score like he did last game against Dallas, the Bulls would have a very good chance against a team that has a lot of playoff experience. And that's what the Bulls really need right now. That's one thing they lack is playoff experience and just experience in general, considering that their average age is around 21 and a half for their starting five. Pat Williams, the 4th overall pick, is 19 years old, younger than me by 2 years. And then the funny part is that the starting five for the University of Wisconsin college students is over 22. So if you're a Bulls fan and you're listening to this podcast, just give them a little bit of a break and just enjoy the ride because it's going to be like a roller coaster. You guys are going to have its ups and it's going to have its downs. So just be patient and just enjoy the fact that you get to watch Bulls basketball because for a while there with COVID, it looked like we weren't going to get NBA basketball for a while, especially with the Bulls. We had to wait 9 months. Last game was in March and win against Cleveland. Didn't get to play their first game up until, a couple of weeks in the mid-December, right before Christmas. So December 23rd, I believe it was the Bulls' first game against Atlanta, which was a blowout, but Atlanta's really good this year. Trae Young, in my opinion, is going to be up there for MVP. So that's going to be it for the 7th episode of Sauce and Hensch. Make sure you like and subscribe to our channel and follow our Twitter, which is also by the name of Sauce and Hensch, and we will always post on there when the new one is coming out. Shout to Joe. Hope he's enjoying Florida and that beautiful weather down there and snowy and cold up here in the Chicagoland area. Miss him. Can't wait to see him again. And hopefully we'll get to sit down and actually do this in person instead of you guys looking at our logo for an hour long. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on Sauce and Hensch.